On January 12, 2010, an earthquake shattered Haiti and would soon shatter something inside an Iowa farmer named Ken DeYoung. 3 days later, Ken was in the cockpit of his small plane, flying medical supplies into Lakai for Bahamas Habit. On what was supposed to be his last trip, Ken was introduced to a Haitian man named Eddie Constant, who showed him the area. Eddie took him to meet 15 orphan girls living in a rented room. They sang to him, they hugged him, and in that moment, the box was shattered for Ken. Haiti became home to our first ever Safety Home Village. Today, that impact has grown to 500 safety homes, a hospital, a dental clinic, a birthing center, schools serving 2,300 children, expanding to serve families displaced from political unrest. We have orphanages and a network of pastors and churches, including one reclaimed from a voodoo temple. In 15 years, that shattered box has seen amazing change that gives hope. The Village of Hope provides safe and secure housing to children and teens who harvested tamarinds they had planted with their own hands 3 years before. A quiet picture of patience, faithfulness, and a future taking root. At the birth center in Camp Perrin, over 1,200 newborns arrived safely, and more mothers now give birth with skilled care. A psychologist named Miss Agathe now walks alongside the orphan children, giving them a safe place to heal and be known. During carnival season, over 100 young people chose a spiritual retreat instead and left changed. And when Hurricane Melissa struck, we were back in action with locals, delivering rice, beans, and hope to families cut off from the storm.
Tornadoes are always a threat to Iowans. In April 2011, a tornado tore through northwest Iowa. Dennis Anderson gathered his youth group and began clearing wreckage. Watching him work, Ken and Terry saw something undeniable. God was working in this moment. Dennis stepped out of youth ministry and into a brand new role leading domestic disaster relief. From that tornado, the ministry has grown into responses across 24 disaster sites. Over 490 families served. For every dollar donated, this ministry has delivered $3.34 of value to families and communities in their hardest moments. In an 18-month period from 2024 to 2025, 1,100 volunteers gave 17,000 hours to families hit by disaster. Dennis and Barb received the 2025 Iowa Governor's Volunteer Award, and the documentary about the Greenfield EF4 tornado was accepted into the Iowa-Nebraska Heartland Film Festival. Proof that this ministry doesn't just rebuild homes, it tells the story God is writing in the rubble.
Peru began with a daughter and a divine introduction. On a trip to the headwaters of the Amazon River, Terry Baxter brought along his daughter, Bethany. There, she met a young Peruvian missionary named Nelton Noriega. Eventually, they married and began their own ministry to the unreached people of the Amazon. When Nelton and Bethany planted Genesis Church in Iquitos, a city you can only reach by plane or boat, they dreamed of using safety homes as cabins for a Bible camp and partnered with us. From a handful of worshipers, Genesis Church now gathers 700 to 800 people every week. Genesis Church is still building, literally. This year, members gave their weekends to lay the foundation of the new Real Love Youth Gym, working side by side. A VBS called Shine Your Light filled the church with children, and at a recent encounter event, 10 people returned home transformed by a truth settled in their hearts, their identity as children of God.
The Peru story continues. In 2013, Hannah came to Iquitos from Iowa to intern with Nelson and Bethany. God had already broken her heart for the kids of the Amazon. On her first trip, she couldn't speak a word of Spanish, but she loved playing with the kids anyway. She moved back to stay and eventually met and married Manuel. One rainy night, they'd prepared 236 meals for the streets, but the streets were empty. So they walked into a government hospital where patients eat only if family brings food, and met an elderly woman who'd been praying all day that God would feed her. The idea for Pay It Forward was born. Today, Pay It Forward teams head into government hospitals and back out to the streets with food, prayer, and the gospel. This year, a Wisconsin team joined Hannah and Manuel to cook 100 meals and deliver 90 gift bags to the children of Belen, the poorest neighborhood in Iquitos. They ended the night with a craft, a testimony, and prayer over every child. Laughter filled the air. That's Lifeline.
Guatemala began with two strangers from two countries meeting in a third. Mark Lee, an American serving in Iquitos, Peru, met a young Mexican man named Ruben Hernandez who was pursuing ministry. The two became friends, and Mark invited Ruben to help him lay the groundwork for a brand new ministry in Guatemala. They planted a church, started a feeding center, and opened a grade school, followed by a secondary school. Today, the Inheritance of Life Christian School serves about 200 students, staffed entirely by 21 local Guatemalans. 10 years ago in Nueva Concepcion, Mark Lee gathered a small youth group in a little kiosk. 3 strangers came. 3 teenagers came. One of them was a boy named Luis. Today, Luis is 23 years old and the pastor of that church. He and Ruben are leading services 3 nights a week, feeding neighborhood children breakfast 7 days a week, and preparing to welcome the first residents into the new elderly care room. You never know where the seeds will be harvested.
Before there was a GoServ Global, there was Terry Baxter, a pastor from Cambridge, Minnesota, who had spent decades equipping believers for spiritual warfare. For 35 years, Terry has taught Freedom Quest workshops, biblical seminars designed to help pastors, missionaries, and everyday Christians intervene for tormented people and break the grip of sinful bondage in their own lives. Freedom Quest workshops still run the way they have for decades, at churches and camps across the United States. International workshops equip pastors and Christian workers in places where teaching on spiritual freedom is scarce and desperately needed. U.S. alumni now carry the ministry forward, sponsoring those international events so the message travels farther than Terry alone ever could. This spring, 65 Haitian pastors gathered for a retreat led by Terry. After a message on integrity and inner healing, a man stood in tears calling for a pastor support network across all of Haiti. And half the room ran to get out of their poverty toward that dream. Meanwhile, Terry carried Freedom Quest to a Bible college in Uganda. The message keeps traveling because freedom in Christ is real and life-changing.
In India, following Jesus costs something. In the remote tribal regions in the north, converts face social rejection, government pressure, and sometimes beatings. And yet the gospel is irresistible. Our co-founder, Terry Baxter, felt this need deeply, and it led to a partnership with Sunny and Cooney, a husband and wife team mobilizing a network of pastors to plant churches and baptize new believers across one of India's most marginalized regions. Today, Emmanuel Boarding School houses and educates children from tribal families, giving them hope for their futures. Bisoya grew up in a house with no electricity. Today, she is a flight attendant. Omni's father was left handicapped in a road accident. Today, she is a nurse. Both are Emmanuel School graduates. In Kaliakani, a place where no church had ever stood, the first building was dedicated to God. Even as scheduled caste Christians face pressure to renounce their faith, Sunny, Cooney, and their pastors keep standing firm.
"15 years ago, a tornado, an earthquake, and a handful of orphans shattered the boxes of a few ordinary people. What God built from those moments is still being built. Through every safety home, every classroom, every storm cleanup, every life delivered into hope, the story isn't over. It's still being written. And tonight, you are part of it."